Dear students, in this module we will look into the neoclassical theory of economics. The learning objectives are like this. We will discuss about the neoclassical theory of economics, and the neoclassical theory maintained that population increase will lead to a lowering of production. So, let us try to get a clear understanding and comprehensive understanding of the neoclassical theory of economics. The neoclassical theory considers that population growth exclusively in terms of number of mouths to be fed has to be considered. Thus, the neoclassical theory views the population growth exclusively in terms of the number of mouths to be fed. Let us discuss these issues in this module. From the early years of the 19th century to the end of the First World War in 1918, classical and neoclassical schools of thought contributed immensely to development of population theories. Let us remember the time periods from the early 19th century to the year 1919, where when the First World War ended. During that time, the classical and neoclassical schools of thought contributions were made with regard to the development of population theories. Economists as well as political economists of that time firmly believed that economy functioned better in a free and private initiative and in an atmosphere of vigorous competition rather than under the government control. This was the view of the economists as well as the political economists. The belief was that economy functions better in a free and private initiative compared to the economy under government control. So, the issue was about free economy versus the economy controlled by the government. It is also necessary to understand the difference between classical and neoclassical schools of thought. The classical theory is based on the notion that production, consumption and distribution of wealth are determined by economic laws. So, the classical theory is based on the concepts of consumption and distribution of wealth, production, consumption and distribution of wealth, and their dependence on the economic laws. On the other hand, the neoclassical school of thought placed greater emphasis on the mathematical economics and analysis to understand the psychological base or consumer demand, decisions and actions. The classical school of thought was founded by Scottish philosopher, economist Adam Smith. The Scottish philosopher and economist Adam Smith lived between 1723 and 1790. Adam Smith's views were supported by prominent personalities of the time, and these prominent personalities who supported the views expressed by Adam Smith included David Ricardo, who lived between 1772 and 1823, a British political economist; Thomas Malthus, who lived between 1766 and 1834, an English cleric and scholar whose views wielded considerable influence in the field of political economy and demography. Another contributor was Nassau William Sr., who lived between 1790 and 1864. Williams was an English lawyer known for his contributions to the economic thought. John Stuart Mill, who lived between 1806 and 1873, English philosopher, political economist and civil servant. And finally, Jean-Baptiste Say, who lived between 1766 and 1832. Baptiste was a French economist. The neo-classical schools of thought was founded by William Jevons, who lived from 1835 to 1882. Jevons was an English economist and logician. Karl Menger, 1840 to 1921, an Australian economist and founder of the Australian School of Economics, and Leon Walras, who lived from 1834 to 1910. Walras was a French mathematical economist. Thus, the neo-classical school of thought was founded by William Jevons, Karl Menger and Leon Walras, an English economist, an Australian economist and a French mathematical economist. The neo-classical schools had its leaders such as Alfred Marshall, who lived from 1842 to 1924, one of the most influential economists of his time; John Bates Clark, 1847 to 1938, an American neo-classical economist; Irving Fisher, 1867 to 1947, an American economist, statistician, inventor and progressive social worker; and Wilfred Pareto, 1848 to 1923, an Italian engineer, sociologist, economist, political scientist and philosopher. Contribution of classical and neo-classical schools of thought to population theory needs an examination, and this examination has to be in the context of the controversial issue of interrelationship between population and production. Now let us look at the population and the neo-classical school. The neo-classical theory maintained that an increase in population will lead to a lowering of production. That means, if the population goes up, the production comes down. In the other words, an inverse relationship between population and production. This is because this theory considers population growth purely in terms of the number of additional mouths to be fed. The whole theory is based on the number of mouths to be fed. As a result of that, the scientists who came out with this theory always felt that if you have more number of people, you have to feed more number of mouths. This view was not conclusively proven because of lack of evidence or because of lack of empirical evidence. It is difficult to evaluate the net influence of population on production because people need to be viewed as both producers and consumers. Our common sense also tells us that the people also contribute in terms of production. They are not mere consumers, they are producers as well as consumers. So, the people contribute to both aspects of production, supply as well as demand. The point therefore is whether population growth, while adding to the number of producers and consumers, simultaneously leads to a proportionate increase in supply and demand. This is the point to be examined. Hence, an important question arises here. How is the per capita productivity affected by population size? So, we need to consider the per capita productivity and see the impact of population size on the per capita productivity. This issue appeared to be resolved when the principle of diminishing returns was formalized and formulated in the second decade of the 19th century. According to this natural law, based on agricultural production, successive additions of capital to a fixed quantity of labor would result in an increase in output. But subsequently, the marginal output and later the average production associated with the variable factor would begin to drop. Though the classical economists accepted the law of diminishing returns as one of the basic economic laws and gave it a better of natural law, a set of rules inherent in human behavior and human reasoning that govern human conduct. However, the controversy over the relationship between population and production continued to be debated at empirical level as well as theoretical level. As the 19th century advanced, it became more and more clear that empirically speaking, the general well-being of the people and population growth go hand in hand. This observation, of course, has discredited both Malthusian theory and the principle of diminishing returns. Let us spend some time here. What we are saying here? As the 19th century advanced, more and more empirical evidence was there, suggesting that the general well-being of the people and population growth go hand in hand. So, this needs to be understood. At the same time, it is also said that current advance in production was a result of several inventions, greater use of power and machinery and other efficient devices, and that the same rate of advancement could not be guaranteed if population continued to grow rapidly. This is another dimension that needs a closer examination. What we are saying here is that if the current advance in production was due to several inventions, what would be the role of population in the growth? If the population continued to grow rapidly, can we achieve the same kind of increase in the production? This needs to be examined. In this context, John Stuart Mill and Henry Sedgwick expressed their opinion that population had already reached the point of diminishing returns and that many countries would be better off with smaller numbers. Thus, John and Henry felt that smaller population size would be an advantage. The question was also extensively discussed at theoretical level. Though majority accepted the principle of diminishing returns, some economists asserted that an increase in the number of people would stimulate production. This is another view from some of the economists. As the 19th century advanced further, production theory itself underwent several changes. Some of the economists struck at very base of the current production theory and they attempted to disprove principle of law of diminishing returns. A neoclassical economist like Marshall pointed out that the law of diminishing returns is applicable mainly to agriculture production and not to industrial production. This is another interesting dimension. According to Marshall, the law of diminishing returns would apply only to agriculture production and the law of diminishing returns may not have any impact in case of the industrial production. In support of his view, Marshall gave the argument as well. What is the argument given by Marshall? He said that as industries offered greater opportunities for division of labor and as there is continuing technological advancement, law of constant or increasing returns immutable in the manufacturing industry. As a result of all these factors, would apply rather than that of diminishing returns. He felt that because of these factors, the law of diminishing returns may not apply. This development in theory of production again raised questions about the relationship between population and production. Thus, Marshall opened another window for discussion about the relationship between population and production. It was soon realized that total and per capita production depend not only on population but also on several other factors in the economic system, and these include resources, labor, capital and technology. Thus, whether you take total income or you take per capita, whether we take total production or we take per capita production, both total production and per capita production depend on several other factors apart from population, and these factors such as economic system, including resources, labor, capital and technology, should also be understood before concluding about the relationship between population and production. The role of population variables thus need to be studied within the framework of complete economic system. It was assessed that per capita production is a direct function of land and other resources. We just referred about these few minutes back. And per capita production is inversely related to the number of people. The population variable thus seems to be playing a dual role as a factor of labor supply and as a divisor, number that divides into another without a remainder of the total product. However, it is worth considering and worth mentioning that not much attention was paid either to ration of workers. However, it is worth mentioning that not much attention was paid either to ratio of workers to total population or to product consumer ratio. These two ratios, namely the ratio of workers to total population and the ratio of product consumer, need to be kept in mind. Some consideration was given to quality of workers in terms of skills. This again brings out another dimension. It is not just the quantity of workforce, the quality of workforce also matters a lot. It has its own importance in terms of the production and increase in production. Possibility of interaction of population with technological factors and capital is yet to be explored. This is another area that needs to be explored still. One interesting observation made by the classical economists is that capital that influenced the size and growth of population and not the other way around. That means they felt that the capital influenced the size and growth of population, but the growth and size of population would not influence the capital. This indicates that problem of capital formulation has not received much attention from them. However, by the end of the 20th century, population variable is given a place of less importance even in the theory of distribution, because it was realized that this theory could not be based only on one or a few simple forces. Marshall, in his work on production and distribution phenomena, paid little attention to population factor. Some writers even completely ignored it. It is thus possible to observe how thinking has changed from Malthus in the beginning of 19th century to Marshall at the end of the century. It changed from a position of considering population as a crucial factor influencing economic growth to that of thinking of it as being of doubtful significance. This change in thinking can be understood against the background of certain facts. During this century, economic growth in the Western world kept pace with the population growth. It was only natural that this factual experience should negate the gloomy picture painted by Malthus. In the last years of the 19th century, however, some economists continued to view increase in number of people as a threat to raising standards of living in the long run. The neoclassical approach analyzed effects of given increase in population in a given state of technology. In its view, increase in population will increase labor supply, which will lower money wage rate and will lead to increase in employment. The demand schedule is assumed as fixed despite a fall in the wages. Thus, producers will find it more profitable to expand output by employing more labor, thereby increasing employment. More intensive utilization of capital equipment increase marginal productivity of the capital, which leads to increased demand for capital goods. Rate of interest is increased, resulting in more savings and greater investment, which puts economy again on the path of progress. The technological progress is a crucial factor in stimulating growth of national income. According to neoclassical technological progress results in greater application of labor saving methods. In this way, technological progress leads to lower cost and improvement in productivity, which in turn will encourage producers to increase the output. To summarize, in this module we looked into neoclassical theories and the relationship between population and production, and then we also looked into various factors that would affect the linkages between population and production, whether the technology, advancement in technology has a role in determining the relation between population and production. We also looked into population and its relationship with production by enhancing the availability of labor supply. So, this module has helped us in getting a comprehensive understanding of the issues related to neoclassical theories. Thank you so much.